Welcome to the Firespitting with BS01 podcast, where we absolutely roast BIONICLE. I'm Swert, and with me are
KZN02
and Spirit.
Wonderful. So we've been gnawing our teeth at this for, I think, decades now. Would you agree with that?
Probably since like 2004, honestly.
Well, I guess a decade and a half.
Oh my! Don't remind me. I don't want to think about that.
Look. I'm the oldest one here. I don't want to think about that either. But here we are.
Yeah, but it's a larger percentage of our lives.
At the end of the day, we're just old men talking about Lego and BIONICLE especially. But yeah, so one of the things that stuck out the most for a lot of people in the storyline has been the concept of time itself. So, for example, we keep hearing that in 2004, 1,000 years occurred between Metronui and the events of Matanui. And today we're going to rant about that.
Yeah,
so I think,
like, what the heck?
Right? Suffice to say, we take one look at the entire timeline, and I think it's safe to say it's a bunch of Kikanalo waste.
Yeah, like the whole thing doesn't make any sense. Like, what a weird thing. So I guess like the problem all starts, like I said, in 2004. So prior to that, everything happened in the time before time, and we really don't have a sense of how long things have happened. And then it kind of goes downhill from there. So I guess, like, did you guys prior to 2004 have any sense that the characters in BIONICLE were functionally immortal? Like, does the lore lead you to that of the first 3 years of storyline?
Not really. I think you're correct in that you don't really get a sense of how old they really are. In my interpretation of the story, it was the Turaga are definitely supposed to be the village elders and older folk, as it were, and the Toa are supposed to be like this. You didn't get the sense of how old they were in the grand scheme of things, but you also did get a sense that the Matoran underneath them would be older than them.
Yeah, like, I guess, like, because the Matoran are so little, you think that they're like kids, kind of a little bit, but they've got like adult jobs. I don't know, like, there's really no sense of age necessarily.
I suppose the other question we have to ask ourselves is, quite plainly, what exactly is a year BIONICLE? Let's ask that question first.
Okay. So a year is like a full orbit, a planet doing a full orbit around like a sun or something. So we know, yeah, that's how we know it on Earth. And we don't know exactly how it works in the Matoran universe. We don't know how far the sun is from, Aqua Magna, Bota Magna, all these planets. So their year may be shorter or longer than ours, and that's probably why the years probably don't make sense to us. That's one interpretation.
Well, something else I just realized is that, so Spherus Magna, I was like, can we calculate the size of Spherus Magna and estimate from there? But Spherus Magna doesn't make any sense, because when it explodes into Bota Magna, Aqua Magna, and Barra Magna, the people living on Barra Magna don't notice a massive decrease in gravity, like, at all. It just seems pretty normal to them. Similarly, Matoran who had been living on Aqua Magna for 1,000 years don't then go to Spherus Magna or Barra Magna and realize, oh wow, it's a lot heavier here. Like, what's going on? Greg, give us answers. Take a physics course.
Right, and the reason you also bring this up is because, as we know, time dilation does have an effect in an intense gravity field, or in this case, in a lighter field, perhaps. So it actually would bring up a good point. I didn't even consider that. What if the Matoran universe is just running at that fast of a speed, like, say, close to light speed? Maybe that's why they can get away with saying they're thousands of years old, because they're only going, like... Maybe I'm reading too far into it, honestly. I don't think the story team thought, hey, what if we have them all running at near the speed of light, and then they could be effectively immortal?
Yeah, like, well, I mean, the whole thing. So the premise is that the world blows up, and the giant robot goes out to see how to not make the world blow up, and then it arrives back in time to fix the world now that it's sufficiently cooled down. Is that correct?
That sounds about right.
Okay, but like, what kind of plan is that? That's a really bad plan.
I will start by pointing out, according to the timeline, because of course we have this pulled up for our benefit to talk about the time. As we know, one of the reasons why the Great Beings even started becoming like the great creators that they are is because the being called Anona tried to drive them to madness, but they ended up inspired to create.
Yeah.
So let's start with that nonsense if we had to. First of all,
Well,
that was 265,000 plus years ago.
yeah, for context, because I think like gigantic numbers, you really can't comprehend them because they're so gigantic, and that's just a failing of the human imagination. But
Yes.
for context, let's see, what it was, how many years ago?
265,000 plus.
265,000 years ago. So that's when that's when the Y chromosomal atom is thought to have lived. So the ancestor of all men on Earth is thought to have lived 270,000 years ago. So basically, why pick such a large number? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, what are they doing? Like, why would they do this?
I mean, honestly, for a child, you could have said 100 years ago and it would have still made just as much relevant sense.
Right, like it kind of made sense when they were robots, I guess, but now that you've got like aliens,
Yeah.
which are by which I mean like the Agori, the Glatorian, whose
Yeah.
species name never got
And
named.
Anona, who is effectively not anything like them.
Right, like I can handle the nonstop. Oh my gosh, what's the H.P. Lovecraft references being older than older than the male gender of
Right.
humanity. But like these aliens, how do they live so long? Like that's so incomprehensible, alien to us. Like, how are we supposed to relate to these characters at all?
I honestly do not know it, but somehow it did.
Yeah. So yeah, like it's such a weird story decision. Well, I guess I mean some things make sense. So once Lego figures out, oh, hang on, we've only certain names that we can use. If we use the wrong names, we're going to get in trouble. So we'll just make our characters immortal. And when we go back 1,000 years, we'll just make everyone kind of the same. I guess that makes sense. And if you're not going to explain where Matoran babies come from, then everyone just has to live forever. Okay, I can accept that. But 1,000 years? That's such an arbitrary number. Was it exactly 1,000 years? Why? What did they do in 1,000 years?
So, if you're referring to the 1,000 years being the Great Cataclysm to the events of,
Right.
So we know that during this entire time, there actually is a page that's known as the Dark Times, of course, in the history of the Matoran universe. We know that, for example, the Zyglak occupied the ruins of the old pit for some reason, which is a whole different story we're going to get into sometime eventually, I'm sure. At some point, obviously, the Brotherhood of Makuta also starts exterminating Toa of Iron and magnetism for reasons.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is, if you recall, during the events of Time Trap, Vakama managed to negotiate at least a year of safety to get them a chance to build up all of their villages, which I guess it took them a year to build everything, maybe even less than. We don't know.
But like that also like I get no, I don't get it. Like a year to build all the villages and Kininui, or was Kininui just like part of the Great Spirit robot? Is that ever addressed?
Kininui, they built that. It's strictly speaking, the only thing that was left on the surface of Atanui was, I believe, the telescope. And I think that's only because that gets like retracted in. And the sundial, which was just on the surface.
Okay, but
At that point.
Okay, so they spend 1 year doing that. What did they spend the next 999 years doing?
Well, we know that basically they were defending their villages from Rahi attacks. Obviously, at this point, the Matoran sphere's effect started kicking in, so the Matoran lost their memories and their strength somehow. Figure that one out. And that's when the Turaga started their Great Krata hunt, because those things, of course, they were totally there from the beginning. We expect them to totally be there from the beginning. We totally.
Gotta catch them all.
But like, okay. So they're hunting for Krata. They're fighting the Rahi, and this somehow occupies their time for 900 years. But it's just too much time. Like,
Oh yeah, I agree. I would have expected, you know, I'm going to bring it up. The time between the Star Wars prequels to the original trilogy, in the storyline was what, 17 years, right?
yeah, I don't know how old Luke is supposed to be. So like 17,
I
18
believe
years.
it's about to be 17. We'll go ahead and call it 17, 18 years just for the discussion here.
Okay.
But think about it. A lot happened in that time frame. Like, the Death Star's construction was completed. We know it was completed because we saw it in the movie. Both 3 and 4, we saw it. So
Right.
what I'm trying to say is, because I don't want to get into full specifics, a lot happened. So a time frame of just saying 20 years, just even 20 years, a lot can happen in that time frame. 100 years, a lot can happen in that time frame. We didn't need it to be 1,000.
Yeah, I mean, like you look at human history, 1,000 years ago was the Middle Ages. So let's say you took a bunch of people from a futuristic society, dropped them on a tropical island with monsters on it. I think, in 900 years, they would have like accomplished something, you know?
I do wonder if, due to the constant Rahi attacks, they couldn't get a chance to breathe. Almost effectively speaking, we really should consider it just their dark ages, which we do call it that. I mean, we call it the dark times for a reason.
Okay, well, why does it take Takua 999 years to get the Toa stones to then summon the Toa? Is that ever explained?
Let's see. I don't think it's ever actually explained why Takua, effectively speaking, doesn't do that. I suppose they'll just write it off as destiny.
Yeah, like I don't know why. The problem is they took a Game Boy Advance side game, like it's really not key to the story, but that ultimately is the catalyst of all of BIONICLE. Is Takua goes through his little adventure collecting the Toa stones and summons the Toa to the island, which then kicks
So
off Matsuui Online Game 1.
it does say at the beginning of the page for the coming of the Toa, Takua, because of his adventurous ways, which often led to trouble, is banished from Takoro. So let's consider that was the reason they even kickstarted any of this.
Now I gotta
But of
find a
course,
text.
go ahead.
Oh, I gotta find the text dump for that game.
Right? Apparently, with a millennium having passed since the Great Cataclysm, Kuda Pterodax launched a new wave of Rahi against Matsunui in an attempt to kidnap the village Turaga. That was apparently the canon explanation is because it's been 1,000 years, Makuta said, okay, time to get everybody involved. Let's get some things happening. Which you have to wonder, was that part of his plan? But that's a different topic altogether.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean that is true to form. Of Makuta knew that Matsunui was going to die in the next year, and so needed the Toa to bring him back to life.
Right.
And so could have telepathically influenced Takua. Oh, like I feel like that would be an answer. I don't like it though, but I feel like that might be the correct answer.
But I guess what we're not really rambling about Makuta's plan or why Takua became an adventurer. The question ultimately is, why did it need to be 1,000 years later?
Yeah,
It could have literally been 5 years later. It would have made just as much sense. Be like, well, we've not been working for 5 years. I guess Matsunui is about to die. Let's just kickstart things.
Yeah, well, I think part of the problem is that the story is being made up as they're going along. Like they've only got certain aspects of the world building planned out. Yeah, so you want to make things really ancient on Matsunui because ancient is mysterious. Ooh, and then you go to Metronui. I just don't know why they picked 1,000 years. Like, I guess to make things ancient.
Perhaps. The next bit of trivia that we have here is, of course, we don't know how long the actual adventure is of the GBA game. We don't know how long it took Takua to get to Onokora, for example, and then go finding all of the Turaga and all that stuff.
Oh, so you
Obviously,
think that?
eventually, no, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Obviously, at that point, we have to assume that however long this actual event took, I mean, what do I even want to say here? The question is, how long did it take for Takua to get from being banished to summoning the Toa? Figure out what that time frame is, and then we can kind of get a sense of just how much action needs to happen. Like, there's no way that happened in, for example, a day. Not as
Right.
large of an island as it is, and how much he had to do, and also then finding time to still sling some snowballs.
Okay, all right. So there's some devil's advocate of, let's say the 2001 storyline takes place over the span of a couple years.
Hmm?
That's plausible. Can anyone disprove that happened?
It doesn't really give us a sense of how long it took. I don't think it would take him a few years, but a month.
Well,
Can we just say a month?
but like I'm talking like from the Game Boy Advance game of Takua travels the island and gathers the Toa stones, summons the Toa. Then he lives through the events of Matanui Online Game 1. The Toa, meanwhile, are collecting their masks and fighting the Rahi and fighting Makuta. How long does it take from the beginning of Game Boy Advance to the end of Matanui Online Game 1? We don't know.
I think it was perhaps mentioned, though I don't have a hard copy in front of me. I want to say it took a couple of months because I do know during the events of from 2001 to 2003, at that time when the Rockshire are defeated, it had been exactly 1 year since the Toa arrived on the island. I remember
Oh,
that bit of lore.
citation needed.
Yeah, I'm gonna double check. Okay, it does say right here. It does say 1 month after the coming of the Toa are celebrating their victory over Makuta,
Oh,
and that's when the Borak arrive. So it's 1 month after the whole coming of the Toa.
it's all coming together now.
Yes, 2 months after the coming of the Toa, that's when the Borak call arrive.
Okay.
So it took so 2002 as a year took 1 month.
Okay. All right. That's fair enough. I'll accept that.
And
Although
it's in that time, obviously, that they became Toa Nuva. That took probably a whole day.
I do like
Apparently,
this
we
note
also go ahead.
this note at the bottom. The Wall of History section on bionicle.com describes the Borak invasion as occurring in recent months. And then the first page of Tetrapa Tanakh cites 7 suns as having passed since the Borak invasion began. So time is a little unclear.
So that would suggest it would be a week.
Oh, but
If we go by 7 suns.
Yeah, between 7 suns and several months, some period of time.
I almost feel like I would need like a chalkboard of like infinite size trying to figure out this stuff. Let's not lie.
Yeah, like you would need to pull up all primary sources. Ultimately, like it's like the amount of research you would have to do to know how much precise time the first couple years of the storyline took is like more effort than the authors put into writing the story.
Right. Okay, KZN, you need to get over there on the chalkboard and Spirit, go find some red yarn. We will solve this thing by the end of the year.
Our years or their years?
Oh,
Yes, we'll find out. So ultimately, it does comes down to what exactly is a year to them. That's why we're going through the coming of Toa. That's probably the only example we have to figure out what is a year to them.
yeah. I feel like, well, I mean, as we have since learned, Greg is prone to changing his mind. Once upon a time, I asked Greg a question like, "Is bionicle time equivalent to human time?" And he's like, "Wow, that's a good question. I don't know." So maybe they're different, but I feel like from a storyline perspective, or sorry, from a storytelling perspective, unless you specify that time is different, assume that it's the same. Would be my thoughts.
Right. Sounds about right. All right. So
My thought just being that like they talk about like things like from a world building perspective, they're not supposed to use words like miles. They're supposed to talk about bio and kaio and mayo, but I feel like there are some references to the imperial measurement system in Bionicle.
sure. All right. So I'm now looking ahead. It says here on the Quest for the Mask of Life page, this is now 11 months after the coming of the Toa.
Okay.
That's when they departed Matanui, which was months after the arrival of Takanuva. So not just the day of it they literally just kind of packed everything up and it took them a few months. So if we are to interpret the events of Takanuva arriving as being, let's say, within the first 3 months of the Toa arriving, that took them then 8 months to pack everything up. That's almost consistent with the idea of them taking about a year to build everything in the first place. So I'm okay with that. And we are talking over 999 years worth of stuff that they've been working on. I imagine they would have to have time to build boats for everybody and all that stuff. So that I'm okay with that particular timeline of
Yeah,
events.
and I guess if you are immortal or like live such a long period of time, 900 years doesn't really mean anything to you.
Right.
So,
And 8 months is literally just you woke up from a nap.
right. Okay, well, yeah, and I think like I kind of want to explore this like from the perspective of as the storyline goes on, we learn more tidbits about just the nature of time.
Okay, this is another interesting one. Because of the events of Bionicle Legends 4, we do have a proper timeline of events happening with regards to where the Paraka are in this. That's how we know certain items. So, for example, it says 1 month prior to the descent down the 777 stairs, if 6 figures called the Paraka defect from the Dark Hunters and head to Mangaya. While exploring the ruined lair, Vaison accidentally is created. We get all that. We've heard that. But the point is, because of the timeline of that book, we now know that it's exactly 1 month after this particular event. That's when the events of Boyanui is coming to fruition. At least specifically them descending down the stairs.
Okay.
So that's where I think we finally get to the idea of it being exactly 1 year ago the Toa arrived, because this is all the events leading up to the Toa going into Cardanui.
Okay, that makes sense. So, like in 2004, all we know is that stuff happened 1,000 years ago. So the 2004 storyline happened 1,000 years ago, and then there are references to other events. It's happening in the distant past, but we don't know how long ago.
Right.
I really don't think we get any world building beyond that. In 2005, we get stuff like the Toa Haga, which are 300 years prior. Is that?
I believe it's about 300. Here, pull that page up. I won't lie, and everybody knows this about me. I kind of blanked out as soon as I got to 2005. All right, so struggle for Metro Nui, it's around that time, if I recall. Well, that's 3,500 years ago. That's definitely not it. That's when we get stuff like, say, Tuyet going nuts with the stones, killing people. Let's hear it for killing people, apparently. Now, here's an interesting tidbit about the Great Cataclysm. 18 months in advance of the Great Cataclysm, Pterodax arrived in Metro Nui along with Nevok and posed at Saragaduma. So that's 18 years before the actual event. So now we get a timeline of sense of how long it took for them to do this. But again, we have to ask the question, how long is a year? And now we have to ask ourselves, how long is it a month?
Yeah, I'm just going to say that a year is an Earth year, a month is an Earth month. Otherwise,
I
we'll
think
go.
that's probably the only way we could define this. But now that's the question. Which of the Earth months is it? Is it a 28-day month? Is it a 30-day month or a 31-day month?
I don't know. I don't want to think about that.
Wait, hold on. If I remember correctly, isn't there a timeline, or like, isn't there a calendar in human history that had it broken up to 18 months of 28 days? Am I mistaken by that number?
Does that even add up? 18 times 28 is 504, so no.
That doesn't make sense. No. Okay, maybe it was less days than that. Well, I guess we have to do 365.25 divided by 28, figure out how many months it would take. Or if it's
No,
not.
no math. No.
Nobody told me there would be math.
Look, I know we're all bad at math, but let's just figure this out. 365.25 divided by, let's just start with 18. That would be 20.29 days worth with either way. All right, what about just doing, I mean, if we do it by 20 or by 12, then it's like 30 point something, so that makes sense. I'm just trying to find a very, what
like
if
a
I
number
take
that
out
makes
that?
sense.
Fine, yeah.
I don't know.
Let me take out that.
Let's just call them 30 days. That's the average length of a month, I think. And then, yeah, I don't think it really matters. Like when Greg says months in the storyline, he means an indeterminate period of time, less than a year, but longer than a day.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
So yeah, Toahaga become Rahaga 300 years ago. Well, I guess we find out about Nadiki. When does he go bad?
Let's see. I'm just going through this is such riveting podcasting.
Oh yeah. So the Toa Dark Hunter War is 2,000 years before the Great Cataclysm. So 2,000 years before the events of 2004,
Mhm.
Nadiki turns evil. So that's already longer, like double the period of time between when the Great Cataclysm happened and the quote unquote present storyline. Like the time just like stretches out longer and longer the further back you go. And I guess like one problem I have is that time seems to matter at least in 2005, and then just matters less and less. So when in Time Trap, when the Shadowed One and Kitongu and Voporok and Makuta are all fighting each other, the Shadowed One gets aged 3,000 years. But for context, that's like nothing.
I believe one of my other friends who I associate with, he's the head of Red Star Games, Lahari. He actually came up with like a mathematic formula to help figure out what the actual time of this stuff is. I'd have to track down that formula and figure it out, but essentially it was like take this number, divide it by 1,000, and then just like times it by 2 or whatever. You get the idea. It's a weird formula. I don't remember the exact formula itself, but the
Okay, but
concept is that would help you figure out what the actual time is to give you a more human scale.
okay,
So
so
you would
let's
take that 1,000 years and break it down to like say 10, for example. I'm not saying that's the exact number.
right, but like the Shadowed One, he's aged 3,000 years. Like for context, once again, let's go back to human history. 3,000 years ago, so it'll be 1,000 BC, the Phoenician alphabet is created. Like, what the heck? Like 3,000 years is such a massive period of time. And he's like, oh, wow, I'm minorly inconvenienced by this. But then also, 3,000 years in like the actual grand scheme of Bionicle is nothing. So, like, he's just like mildly inconvenienced by that? Like,
Yeah.
for, I guess, 3,000 years prior to the quote unquote present storyline is the Toa Dark Hunter War. So he gets like aged back to that. But like, when everyone is 100,000 years old, like who cares? Who cares? Like why include that? I mean, obviously Greg didn't think of that when he expanded the timeline to being 100,000 years of a
Oh
giant
no,
robot
I'm
flying through
highly
outer space.
inconvenienced by the fact that I'm 5 seconds older.
Yeah, like I wouldn't even notice if I was 5 seconds older.
The human body is really good at not noticing things until you like feel it. So the question is, do you think he felt any joint pain? Do you think he gained anything from this, or do you think it's just oh no, this just kind of tingles?
I think he's fine. He doesn't have any lime green pieces on him.
Oh, if
Oh,
you
that's
have a
good.
lime green joint and you left it out doing nothing for 1,000 years, will it still break?
Yes, instantly. It'll instantly turn to
Instantly.
dust.
It would just be pulverized. Uh, Good news, kids. Your Lego is not meant to last forever. Enjoy it while you can.
Yeah, so I guess it's really not until 2006 that we really get a sense of the broad scope of like the history of. Sorry, I just remembered that the other piece of timeline news that we knew was that Lacan fought the Kanohi dragon.
Right.
Uh,
Yes. That was a way
but
to help flesh out his character a little.
but even the Kanohi dragon. Oh, here's a mild rant I have about the Kanohi dragon.
Oh,
So
here we go.
it's introduced as being like the defining moment for Lacan and his team. Lacan, leading a team of 10 other Toa, 4 of which were Toa of Ice, managed to subdue the Kanohi dragon. But we later learn that the Kanohi dragon was previously defeated by another team of Toa previously, but we don't even hear about them. So is it just constantly in cycles of being frozen and defeated? And what's going on? Come on. Build your world building in a sensible direction, for goodness sake.
Oh, and here's another one. Between 3,000 and 1,000 years ago, the first Rahi arrive on Metro Nui. You remember them? The ancient Rahi?
But
That Mavra's
Takua,
like, oh, look, these are my friends.
but Takua is the most ancient of everything. Why? Why did they exist? Why didn't Greg remember they existed? He wrote a whole book about them. Why?
Not only did he write a whole book about them, but they were still alive when the Toa got there.
Right, like it doesn't make any sense. It's not even like they evolve because they're robots with organic parts. They don't evolve into other things. So why would they be ancient? Like, are they supposed to be prototypes by the great beings? We might actually know the answer to this. I can't remember what the answer is.
I don't even know if there's not even a link to them on this page, as far as I can tell. That's the other part.
The first Rahi were created over 100,000 years ago by the great beings to inhabit the Matoran universe. Okay, so they're I get, but like, what were they? What was the point of them? Well, I mean, the point of them was to create conflict for what
Right.
a voyage of fear. But yeah, I don't know. Come on, Greg, why didn't you write this to stand up to closer examination 15 years after the fact?
Probably someone could have got bored and just created them for the heck of it.
Well, yeah, according to BS01, first Rahi were created over 100,000 years ago by the Great Beings. So I guess Makuta learned how to make Rahi from the Great Beings or something like that.
I believe the original purpose of the Makuta was to start creating Rahi after the Great Beings said, this is probably hard. Let's teach somebody else to do it, and then they just did it. I'm double checking that now to see. So yeah, most Rahi were created by the Makuta, but it doesn't say anything about a few Rahi that were created by the Great Beings or other earlier factions, such as the Hand of Artaka, preyed upon Makuta.
What?
That's interesting. Other species are Rahi and the results of factors such as energized protodermis acting on pre-existing Rahi, sapient beings, or the environment. Interesting. Yeah, no, first of all, it looks like the Hand of Artaka actually created other Rahi as well. So we would have to go through a whole... That might be its whole episode in itself, trying to figure out what Rahi were created by other, other groups other than Makuta. And like what was their overall purpose, because there can't be more than say 10 of those.
Right. So on the Hand of Artaka page, it talks about the energy hound.
That makes sense. That would
so-
actually explain a lot if Hydraxon was a member of the Hand of Artaka and he would know
Okay.
the ancient language.
Yeah, well, okay. Citation needed on this Hand of Artaka preyed upon, like Rahi created by the Hand of Artaka preyed upon Makuta. Why would they do that? That doesn't make any sense. The Makuta were good when the Hand of Artaka were operating.
Well, they probably maybe a backup plan just in case they went bad. Maybe
I guess.
gotta prepare for everything.
Let's also consider. Oh, here's the part you're really gonna hate. Over 100,000 years ago, the Hand of Artaka was founded with the goal of maintaining peace and pursuing justice in the still forming Matoran universe. The Hand named themselves after Artaka, as he had made many fundamental things in the universe.
Yeah, like 100,000 years ago. That's like the Stone Age. And so Axon has been operating as a covert agent of the Hand of Artaka, later the Order of Matanui, for all of human history. Like we didn't have agriculture 100,000 years ago. Like what is this? Why make it so old? It doesn't make any sense.
This is true. Although a force for good, the members of the Hand were very undisciplined and caused massive amounts of damage while performing their duties despite good intention. Oh, so we're talking there in Boys Universe. Got it.
Yeah. But like this is the problem with immortal characters. Like I really can't connect to Axon because he doesn't make any sense.
No. And here's the funny part. Helrix was also a member of the Hand of Artaka.
Oh, interesting. I guess that would make sense. I feel like a lot of this Hand of Artaka stuff is like post-Bionicle retconning, you know?
I wouldn't be surprised. I was about to say, if you had said it's hand waved, I'm gonna really just like flip my laptop right now.
Okay, so
So what is time?
yeah, well, I guess the big 100,000 number appears in 2008. I want to say maybe 2009. That's when we really get a sense of. That's when the Great Spirit was made, or Matanui was made. The Great Spirit robot.
Right, with the prototype robot and then the GSR itself. As soon
that's
as they
what-
introduced, basically Baramagna was when they finally got the sense of scale, and it's like, this still makes no sense.
Yeah, well, I guess even in 2007, like things go back 80,000 years for the Baraki. 80,000. So they were in jail for 80,000 years, give or take. So for context, once again, 80,000 years ago, that's when humans first left Africa.
Jeez.
And that's how long the Baraki have been in jail for. Like, okay, so huge problem for the justice system in Bionicle. Where's the rehabilitation?
Right.
It's just not there. Like, if you're going to imprison these warlords and not try to rehabilitate them to society, that's just cruel and unusual punishment.
Yeah, that's very true.
Because if you can live for as long as humans have left Africa, then surely that's enough time to, get some therapy.
You know what's even worse about that is, if you think about it, Bertaka was sentenced to the pit as well. He was only in there for like a month in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
Literally, in their time scale, he had only been there for about a month, because I don't know exactly how long it had been a week. It was exactly 1 week. I remember that. Why do I remember that? I think it was mentioned in Downfall.
Yeah.
Does that sound right to you?
I mean, I'll believe it. Like, I guess, like, it makes sense because he kind of gets taken by Botar at the end of the 2006 storyline, and then
Right.
2007 storyline picks up immediately after, which is put a pin in that because that's another problem that 2006 to 2008 happens in like a day. What the heck?
If my
Like,
memory is correct, it took them a whole week between the events of losing the mask on Voya Nui down to getting down to Mahri Nui.
yeah, I guess that's a problem that starts in 2004 of like the Toa Mata spend a very long time being Toa Mata and then a fair amount of time being Toa Nuva, and you get a chance to know them. Whereas the Toa Metru, they maybe spend like a week being Toa. Is that accurate?
Sounds about right.
Yeah. During which time they become Toa Hordika, turn back into Toa Metru, and then turn into Taraga after spending a week as Toa. Like, what?
Actually, I would argue the events of 2005 must have taken place over a span of about a month, I would say.
Okay, all right.
I would
But
argue that just because of how much happened. And as we've already determined, all of 2002 occurred within 1 month, according to our timeline. So
Right,
we have
okay.
to assume that maybe 2005 is the same deal where there was a lot that happened in that timeline. If you go back and read the comics and the books, and then I guess the movie, which makes it seem like it all happened within a day.
Yeah, well, I guess part of the problem is that, like, once you get to the Toa Enika, they like that all happens in a very short span of time. Of their
It
Toa
really does.
Enika, and then suddenly they're Toa Mari, and then suddenly now they're appearing in the serials fighting the Toa Haga, and it's all I can't
Yeah.
remember anything else that they do. It's all kind of a mess.
Yeah, I know.
Oh?
Surprise
Joel.
guest appearance.
Hey, just in the nick of time. Okay, I'm horrible.
I get it.
Okay, so
Horrible.
Chols is up to speed.
Yes, the subject is time, of which I have very little of today, but I'm glad to be here.
Don't worry, I have a timer, and it tells us we have exactly, what was this? 11 minutes left.
Just like in Bionicle, that timer doesn't mean anything.
You are not wrong, but there you go. So ultimately, the question is, maybe Trolls, you might have some insight on this. What do you think 1 year of Bionicle time is? Like, what is 1 year? And I'll give you a sense of feeling, just to give you an idea of what events happened in a 1 year span. We had all of 2001, we had all of 2002, we had all 2003, and the first month of 2006 happened within 1 year.
I don't like that. I don't like that. I want to be an old man and be like, nah, that happened. Those are all separate years. I know they're not because, like, obviously the Baroque thing happens, like, immediately after Makuta gets thwacked. Yeah, that doesn't feel like a year to me. Like, it could, but it's because I experienced the story as it was being told in real time. So that's obviously why.
Yeah, they should have honestly just made Bionicle match real time roughly. Like that really wouldn't have detracted too much from things, I think.
Then you could have fun non-canon adventures in the middle.
Right. Like
Right.
So many opportunities for story.
Yeah.
Let's get this in perspective. So apparently, according to our timeline, all of the events that led from the Toa coming to defeat Makuta happened in 1 month. And then 2002 all happened in 1 month. And then the events of 2003 happened within a month.
And don't we also know like a bit of like the Toamata's life before they got shot up in the canisters? Like how much of that was in the same year?
Are you referring to when they were training with Taka, or?
I think so. Yeah, that was it. Like it's been so long.
That happened 100,000 years prior.
Of course,
right.
Nothing happened in those 100,000 years. Well, except for all like the Nui stuff, but
But also, like, wouldn't they be just like horribly out of date? Like, they're some of the most powerful Toa, but like they've been asleep for 100,000 years. Like that's like so according to the Wikipedia, 100,000 years ago, the earliest structures in the world were built in Egypt. So imagine taking a bunch of ancient Egyptians and giving them magical powers, and then hoping that they save the world.
But just like come back now and be like, hey, like how are you guys at city planning? It's like, well, just stack a bunch of bricks on top of each other. What's the problem?
Make them into a triangle. Trust me.
Yes, it works. And admittedly, it did work for back then.
Also, make a half circle for that bridge there. You'll thank me later. The Romans will get it.
They might even cross it. Wait, that's the bridge. Yeah, I don't know.
They'll
Time is weird. Time travel should have been allowed. Lots of opinions.
Ooh. Well,
Oh, yeah.
time travel kind of was allowed in
But
a way.
I don't know. It was like such a weird thing where people kept asking, like, can time travel be a thing? And Greg was like, there's no time travel. But like,
Oh, no,
I think
and
that might have
now
been
I have a
also just
headache.
everyone's
realized.
definitions of time travel are just weird.
Yeah, I just realized we're talking about time, but we haven't even touched on the Vahi yet.
Oh yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
How much
Yeah.
time have you wasted? Oh, actually, don't say that. If you made it this
we haven't
far in,
wasted-
you're
we haven't
fine.
wasted any time. No. Let's stop and think about this. In Time Trap, Vakama went to go recover the Vahi because he made it. He's feeling very nostalgic
It's his
over it, I
mask.
guess.
I mean, yeah, it's cool.
He's like, I'm going to put that on a wall somewhere, and I'm never going to speak of it again until we need it in 1,000 years.
This super important mask that nobody can touch. Yeah, it's gonna keep it in the hut.
Here's a question: If Voporok exists and has all the powers of the Vahi, then what's the point of the Vahi?
Voporok was not able to actually use those powers, like actually summon those powers and do anything with it. Voporok was only capable of aging a character that was like struck against it. Like if they fought Voporok, like their hand would turn 1,000 years old.
Oh no, 1,000 years.
I was gonna say, that's
Oh no,
not
one wrinkle.
Not even. It's like, oh, I guess it's time for an oil change.
No, we already talked about the Shadow One being struck against Voporok, and it's like 3,000 years his age, and it's like, oh no, backache.
Oh no, 3,000 years doesn't mean anything in this world. That's the other weird thing. It's like there's such huge gaps between things. It's like you can say like, oh, this main storyline is happening in a matter of years, but that is so fast compared to most of the lore, where it's like gaps of like thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah. So okay, maybe they go into like hibernation cycles, and that's why everything happens every 1,000 year.
I think now we're okay. Then again, there was that big time skip while the Hand of Ortago was busy.
It was the Order Matinue, I believe, and yes, the 6-month time slip, as it were, where everybody does know what happened during that time, and it's like, okay, we don't know what happened. Also, meet Takua. We don't know.
I don't even remember what happened in the past 6 months. Like, come on.
Right. Are we sure that was the only instance of a time slip? Who knows? Maybe others have happened before.
Ooh.
I know the whole timeline is made up. It's all sham. I swear.
Well, there are other things.
Actually, that opens up a whole new possibility we should really elaborate on at some point. Is this story podcast for that?
What, for elaborating on the Bionicle lore for hours? Maybe.
No, I meant like this episode. Is that really the right one to elaborate on the idea of what if there's been more than one time slip?
Okay, here's my theory. Okay, this actually explains a lot. So it's really weird that things like the Borok are they're like buried underground in the archives, and they're like so ancient. But theoretically, Matanui would have needed the Borok on a regular basis as he's hopping from planet to planet to observe them in secret. Also, there's like an ancient tablet that talks about the Visorak, even though that doesn't make any sense, because why would there be an ancient tablet if the Visorak are current? So here's what happened. Explains the time slip, explains everything. Matanui is constantly clearing his browser history, which just wipes everyone's brain. And there's just like huge gaps in the timeline. And people are like, Matanui, where's your browsing history? And he's like, I
Googled Rudaka again. I'm sorry.
And there we go. That's my theory.
That's exactly how that works.
And then they're just so the ancient tablet is just a cookie left behind that never got cleared.
Exactly. Like,
yeah. Like you get it.
Like what?
See?
One of those like temporary files that that's left behind.
Everything in this world is both like alive and also like a machine. So any of these analogies we make are totally valid the entire time. Trust me.
Actually, a thought occurred to me. You bring up the Borok, and I just have to remind you. Technically, all they are just the world's most giant shaver ever, like a giant shaving blade.
Yeah, basically.
That's all it is. It scrapes off his face.
Ouch.
I remember Schick Hydrobot. That was my favorite Bionicle character.
Now I'm thinking about it. What am I gonna have to Photoshop in? Like a razor blade with Borak on the head, or am I gonna have to do Borak with razor arms?
Yeah, I just put Schick Hydrobot on the template. What do you call it? Thumbnail? I don't know internet.
Right. No, I already know what I'm gonna do with the thumbnail. You'll see later. It's gonna be amazing. I hope.
Hope so.
But yeah, so speaking of that, speaking of hope, and also the other two, the mid-story stuff, the 500 years, stories untold in Metro Nui, Matanui, and Voya Nui.
Yeah, well, even
So those are placed at the 500-year mark. Exactly. Now, Spirit, you're the one that wrote Dweller Report.
that is an actual fact.
That is an actual true fact that you can only find on BS01 and also everywhere else that have taken the
True.
story and ran with it.
True news.
Everybody who copies
What?
BS01 has it.
Yeah. Well, we do have copy left, so whatever. The question
Let's
is,
copy from BCB.
when you wrote that, did you always intend it to be a single night of events, or was it multiple nights?
I guess one night. Oh, I mean, that's when the action happens, like over the
Right.
course of a night. I don't know, there's like a lead up to it of like Norik is having bad dreams. I don't know, you really get the sense that nothing happens anywhere in the world for 1,000 years. That's kind of what I wrote it with the intention of. It's just Duma, the Rahaga, and Kitanku chilling on Metro Nui just because. Later, we find out that the Rahaga and Kitangu were going around healing the Rahi. Thanks for retconning my story, Greg. But
Oh, it's the Recon alert.
Everything after this is non-canon. Let's go.
okay, so I got a question because I
Yes.
want to shoehorn in
We'll start wrapping up. But yes, go ahead.
before the end of the episode. I was kind of okay with like the artificial beings of the Matorian universe just being immortal, but then to have the Glatorian be older than them and like
Oh, that hurts my brain.
and then everyone's got amnesia of like, oh yeah, I vaguely remember when the planet exploded, the most eventful event of all of events. I kind of remember that. I don't really remember what happened. I got vague recollections of back then. But
planets explode all the time.
But also, like, okay, maybe if they were like old and decrepit, but it's like a car who is still fighting 100,000 years later. So we can only conclude that 100,000 years is nothing to these people.
Yeah, that's quite true. Actually, as I recall, no, the Glatorian do have generational because they keep mentioning Gresh as being very young. Though, what is young to people? That's the question. Is he 40,000 years old?
Well, I think canonically, Gresh is like the youngest character.
Yeah.
Well, I guess Vizon would be the youngest
Vizon
character.
is effectively, he is the youngest character at only about 2 months old.
It's just a little baby.
And he's extremely immature.
Just like a baby.
He's already saving Voya Nui. No, he's not. He's terrorizing it.
And exactly like a baby, he puts on a cape. He jumps on the closest animal he can find.
Yep.
Sounds about right.
Yep. Grabs the nearest staff that he grabbed. Like
the nearest stick and hits people with it. Yeah.
What are you doing with that mask as he runs away?
And just like a baby, he goes around stealing things that's not his.
Yep. No, this all checks out.
Yeah.
This all checks out. And then he's punished by somebody to it's like, fine, if you want it that badly, you carry it. Then it gets stuck to his face.
See, now look what you've done.
I told you what happened if you made that face. You're stuck like that.
Nice.
So yeah, ultimately time is such a weird concept of Bionicle. It's like, I don't even think we have an answer to what a year is, much less we don't even have an answer to what a day is to these people.
Yeah, like it's just
I'm gonna finish this right now and just say it's all this, like everything we're experiencing in Bionicle is actually like rather close to our actual time, but like everything spins really fast. There you go. There's your answer. They're just hurtling through space way too fast.
Okay, maybe.
Yes.
Okay, yes, definitively, that's the answer. Okay, let's imagine Lego sends you an email and says, "Hey, we want to make Bionicle Gen 3. We want to make it kind of like Gen 1. Let's world build. How does time work?" How do you fix the problems with time of Bionicle Gen 1?
Make up their own measurement of time, just like with the distance.
Okay.
Years.
All right.
Okay. So let's just say for our personal units of, let's say, a second, let's say the actual time is the same. So 60 seconds is still a minute. 1 minute go like 60 minutes in an hour. And then we just decide from there what exactly is a year in this universe. Is it similar to, say, Mercury, where 88 days is a full year? That's the question to ask yourself.
Yeah, I think giving them made up names keeps things very ambiguous. It definitely like breaks your brain to try to think about like different lengths of time. But I would be fine with that as a cop out solution.
I think you can do it well. I've seen times where it gets like confusing, like the Voltron Netflix series where they started making up like time different names for different sections of time, and like none of it made sense, but they just owned it for like 8 seasons and just rolled with it. It kind of worked, but at the start it was like, well, what are they saying?
Or I guess you could make it so that the characters are not immortal ancient robots that are older than all of human civilization, so that they have babies, or I don't know, return to the Allspark.
Of course. I just want there to be less like ridiculous time gaps. Like, oh, these cool things happen. How long ago? 100,000 years. Okay. And the same people were around? Yes. Okay. Like, set some background lore, and then like let the fun things happen in story time, like while you're telling the story. Mostly BIONICLE did that well, but I see a lot of series where it's like, oh yeah, everything cool that happened so long ago. Yeah, let's not do that this time.
Yeah, I think that's a rule of storytelling. Is the story you should be telling should be the most interesting story. Don't be like, oh yeah, something really cool happened a while ago. Then tell me that story. Don't put me in the present if the present is boring.
Exactly. Although I think BIONICLE did well enough with that, but a lot of things are like, why aren't we telling the story of how we got here? That sounds way cooler.
Yeah, well, I think that's, I mean, part and parcel of like a story that's made up as you go, of you're just going to run into problems.
True. I have just done the math. If approximately to get to 100,000 years, if your year is 88 days, it would take about, I think, 1,000 rotations. Well, that's how many days are 100,000 days. Never mind. I thought I did the math. I'm horrible at math.
Oh, I see. So like if days are really quick. I don't know, but you have to make days long enough to like cram in the 2006 storyline.
Well, here's the thing. If the orbit is slower, like, okay, if the orbit is fast enough, but the rotation of the planet is slower, so that it still maintains the 24 hours, but it goes around in like a year. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, actually, no, I don't see what you're saying, but I have my own theory now, all of a sudden.
Go ahead.
Drawing from a different source of fiction. In Game of Thrones, the length of a season is variable. Like you might have a summer that lasts for 7 years. What if in BIONICLE, the length of a day, the length of time is just constantly shifting and changing? Because, I don't know, make up some reason to do with the Vahi. So that's why you can get a whole lot done in the span of a day, or you can spend 1,000 years doing nothing because time is constantly speeding up and slowing down.
Okay. Now, as you recall, though, and this is the part that really breaks your theory, Greg did mention once that the Vahi would only control things in the Matoran universe, not outside of it.
Which didn't happen.
Yeah.
So, technically speaking, if Akama had smashed the Vahi right then and there, it would have just ruined the Matoran universe. Period. Stop.
All right, I'm going to break everyone's brains here, but actually kind of flowing off of that. Don't forget, most of the backstory of BIONICLE does not take place on Spherus Magna, Boda Magna, or Aqua Magna, or any of those places. Most of it's taking place while Matanui is tooting around the universe. Time is not related to any planetary rotations. It is entirely made up increments just for the Matoran universe. And even conceptually, something like the Vahi can only affect time in that. It's entirely a separate temporal space. It's all fake. Time is fake. I was right.
Okay. I think the only thing I can take away from this is that Vakama should have just smashed the Vahi and put us out of our misery, for goodness sake.
BIONICLE ended with Time Trap. Everything after it is fake. Actually, I hate that. Don't do that. We never freed the band.
Actually, we finally freed the
No.
band after 15 years.
The All-American Rejects.
Did they break up? Is the band free now?
I don't
Let's
know.
look that
I
up.
don't listen to them.
Some say they're still on a tropical island to this day.
If this ever gets pop big enough for people to start making bingo of random things that come up, I'm going to make sure All American Rejects is on every single card.
Right. Also, I think one of the episodes we have to definitely do is still doing a review of music. Not playing it on YouTube, obviously, but we have to review music, like all the music in Bionicle.
Yeah, still 1999 to present, according to Wikipedia.
Well, they keep moving on. No, let's move along. That's what the title is. I sound like an idiot.
They made a coronavirus song. Yeah.
All right. I think I definitely think we're wrapping up this time.
Would you say that we're out of time?
I would never say such a blasphemous thing.
All right, everyone's silence speaks volumes.
Sorry, I was kind of dumbfounded.
Play some cricket sound effects there. Make me feel a little better.
It's all good.
All right. And with that, I think we are definitely out of time. There, I said it.
All right,
Okay.
everybody. We talked about time. Time is fake.
Yes, time is an illusion. Ignore time. But it is a really good Pink Floyd song. And with that, I'm Swert.
All right, Chols.
This is Casey and 02.
And Spirit.
And with that, enjoy your headache.
Goodbye, everybody.